Update. My mother-in-law asked my husband to subscribe to her OF to support her. Original post. My mother-in-law, 40 female, has always been very open about sex. When I first met my husband, she managed an adult toy store. About a year ago, she started working towards a degree on sexual health and wellness. She nude models for a local artist. And around a month ago, she started an OF account. Sex, and an openness about it, has always been an extraordinarily normal thing for her. I have absolutely nothing against her working in that industry. However, I've had some slight concerns about it before. Not specifically her working in the industry or her openness in general, more so how open she is, especially with her own kids. For example, my husband and I started dating in high school when she was managing the store. When she would come home from work, she would stop into my husband's, boyfriend at the time, room and hand us sample sizes of different lubes and sensation creams, saying, "I thought you guys might want to try some of these." It always made us both pretty uncomfortable. And it was extremely awkward to have my boyfriend's mom hand me things to try with her son. But nonetheless, the most conversation that my husband and I ever had about it back then was about how awkward it was. Awkward and uncomfortable enough that we never actually used these things. They just piled up on a shelf by his bed. Another time while we were dating, fresh out of high school, we were hanging out with his sisters. His mom was still working at the toy shop. Once in a while, she would come home with silly toys. And on this night, she walked in with a 1-foot-long glittery dildo. She playfully whipped it around towards us like a sword. His sisters screamed and ran from her, and for a while we all laughed and had fun about it, snatching it from one another and chasing each other around with the glitter schlog. Eventually, my husband's sister, 17 at the time, said something like, "Mom, you better not have brought that home to use. That's crazy." My husband chimed off and ew, saying he didn't need to think about that. And his mom laughed and replied, "Oh no, that's silicone. You know the toys I use are glass." Again, my husband made a weird face, but didn't say anything. When we got to his room, I said that it was weird that his mom talked to her children about what she uses to get her rocks off. And he told me that she's always been way too open about things that none of them wanted to know. But that she's always been this way, so he's just gotten used to tuning it out. As time went on, I got used to the openness, and it was just that, being too open about personal stuff within conversation. However, yesterday the openness went too far. My husband and I were sitting in our living room watching TV. My husband got a text from his mom and opened it, and had a visceral reaction. He tossed his phone down, stood up, walked away from it with his hands over his face while saying things like, "Oh my God," and "holy crap" under his breath. Naturally, I thought that someone had died, so I started frantically asking what was wrong. All he said was that he didn't even want to open his phone again. I asked again what was wrong, and he told me that his mom just sent him pictures. I was confused, but my concerns started to grow. I asked what he meant by pictures, and he hesitated before saying, "I don't want to ask you to look, but I can't open it back up to delete it myself, so I need you to." My stomach dropped. I opened his phone to see what was there, and I immediately felt nauseous. There was a text that read, "Hey, I know you've always supported me, and I wanted to see if you'd be willing to subscribe to my OF so that I can get my numbers up while I'm still getting started. Of course, I don't expect or want you looking through it, but the more subscriber numbers I have, the more engagement I can get. I was also wondering if you'd be willing to share my link to some of your friends at work. Husband is in a male-dominated blue-collar job. The pics I included are to send to them with a link, but don't tell them I'm your mom." And under it was the pictures. There were 3 nude photos of his mother, and not just naked in a mirror or pic of the boobs kind of photos. They were full-on pornographic poses, too graphic to share here. My blood was boiling. I deleted what she'd sent, and my husband and I were both silent for a moment. I didn't know what else to say or do, so I broke the silence by asking, "What now?" My husband told me to block his mom on his phone, so I did. I asked if this was something his mom has done before, and he said no. He told me that in the past, she's asked if he wanted to see pictures of the drawings she posed for. He always felt a bit guilty saying no, so he simply didn't respond when she asked, and she never sent it. Then, my husband went pale and started walking to the bathroom saying he felt sick. While he was in the bathroom, I blocked his mom on my phone as well, including her social medias. When my husband came back out of the bathroom, he called his sister. He asked her if she was with their mom, and when she said no, he explained to her what all had just gone down. His sister was also speechless. Then, he asked her not to say anything to other family members right now, and explained that neither him or I would be in contact with their mom for a while. He also told her that anytime we were home for a visit, he would let his sisters know so that we could plan to see them, but that his mom would not be included in those plans from here on out. My mother-in-law quickly realized that she was blocked on everything by the both of us, and by that night, she had the whole family blowing up our phones asking why. The constant messages haven't stopped, and so far, we've just muted our phones as we don't even know what to say. How do you explain that your mother sent you her homemade porn? Now for the top advice before reading the updates. My opinion is, mother-in-law is gross and may have some incest feeling for her son. Why didn't her dad, mom's dad, daughter, or anyone else in the family get the opportunity to help further her next business venture? I'm sure everyone would love to help her. I'll be updating whenever things move along a bit, but for now, therapy is our next step. Husband and I are already therapy regulars, but I'll be talking to my husband about diving more into his mom's past with explicit conversations and stuff. And to answer your questions, mother-in-law was always open, but never so outwardly explicit with either of her daughters. Granted, they were younger, but even when they reached the ages that my husband was, she still never dove so far down the sex rabbit hole with them, whereas she would try to talk very explicitly with my husband when he was younger, and she would even ask sexual questions about me. He often just wouldn't answer, and when he would outright say that he didn't want to have these conversations, she would get extremely defensive towards him. My worry absolutely is some sort of odd incestual thing. And as far as other men in the family, there really aren't any. Mother-in-law's dad walked out when she was a baby. Husband's dad walked out while mother-in-law was pregnant with his youngest sister. She doesn't speak with any uncles in the family either. Covert incest is a form of non-physical sexual abuse. Examples of covert incest could be the parent sharing intimate, graphic details of their own sex life to the child, practicing voyeurism, exhibitionism, inappropriate sharing of images, and similar behaviors that, while still being sexual abuse, are described as covert for their intangible nature. Thank you for these comments. I've never heard of covert incest, but now I know exactly what is going on, and my husband and I both have some reading up to do. Oh God, I thought my family was bad. My sisters are inappropriately open about their sex lives and get upset that I'm not the same. I'm their brother, by the way, but even they would have the decency not to send me their OF. In fact, I never even considered the fact that one of my sisters probably has an OF that I don't know about, and I hope to never consider that again. I know after reading the other post that she is just inappropriately open in general, honestly at a similar level to my sisters, but is there any reason that she has ramped it up? Is she struggling with money or something? I'm just trying to understand the very clear escalation out of nowhere. I don't know. She isn't struggling, so it wouldn't be that. I know she's always wanted to do sensual modeling, so maybe it's excitement? I truly do not understand her thinking. Now for the first update. Many ask for an update, so here is a small one for now. When my husband got home from work today, he did have me recover the messages for evidence should it be needed. I screenshotted the message with timestamps and each of the photos. In the photos, I scribbled over her not-so-private areas as well. After that, I sent the images to my phone and once again deleted the messages from his phone, both in his mother's texts and mine, per husband's request. This was something that several people suggested in the comments of my previous post, and believe me, we were on the same page before I even read them. My husband and I are also regulars in therapy, both individual and couples counseling. When we got married, we agreed that doing counseling from the get-go was a good idea. Not because we have problems in our marriage, but it gives us the tools to confront issues in the future and keeps us on the same page 100% of the time. That being said, I asked my husband if he'd ever mentioned his mother's sexualness in his own therapy, and he said no. Since it is how she's always been raised, he saw it as mostly normal. I suggested that this should most definitely be brought up at his next session, and he agreed. I also asked if there was anything that has happened that was a bit overboard in the past. Outside of conversation, he said that his mothers would often come home from work with new lingerie, and she would put it on and wear it around the house for the rest of the night as if they were regular clothes. When she would do this, he would either stay in his room or go to a friend's house because it made him uncomfortable. Several people asked why there hasn't been a conversation about her talking about uncomfortable topics. There has been. When my husband and I were dating, both of us minors, she would talk to my husband about our sex life explicitly. Some of the questions she's asked him are if he likes girls who are clean-shaven, if him and I were using lube, if I preferred ribbed rubbers, if we had tried certain positions, even which form of stimulation I preferred. When she would ask these things, my husband simply wouldn't answer with more than "I don't know," but eventually he did tell her to stop. He told her that he didn't want to talk about these things with her, that he knew I wouldn't want her talking about those things with her, and that her asking this stuff made him extremely uncomfortable. Her response was to get defensive and act as if she'd been disrespected. She would say that sex was normal, that she should be able to have these conversations with her son. She even accused him of shaming her sexuality. So he went back to ignoring the questions altogether. Some suggested that we have an in-person conversation with her about this happening. Not only do we live far away, but we aren't ready for a conversation about it, and we especially aren't ready to discuss it in person. This happened yesterday afternoon, and it will honestly be a very long time before any sort of communication happens with her at all. I did find out what she'd been telling family. She's telling them that she asked if her son supported her, not if he would subscribe and share her content. That is why family has been reaching out and asking why we've blocked her for asking that. We will be telling family exactly what happened, but we aren't quite ready to do so yet, and that will come within the next few days. We're still processing all of what's going on. My husband has a therapy session tomorrow, and we have one together the next day. We will likely wait to talk about this with family until after our sessions. That way we can get our ducks in a row a bit more, and we are even considering legal action. Again, that is something we will bring up with our therapists before continuing. That is the main reason we took screenshot evidence. For those curious, yes, mother-in-law is young. She had my husband at 16, 17, and we got married young as well. Very common among my family, and in the field of work he is in, military. So, him sharing his mother's content would heavily affect him. Not just a firing, that would give him a sharp sexual harassment assault response and prevention case, and a possible dishonorable discharge which would make it extremely difficult to go on after the military. That's all I have for an update right now, but trust that there will be another. Thanks so much for all of the advice and support I received on my last post. I seriously gained such good info from the comments and it's been really helpful. This is so, I have no words for it. Up? What she did was sexual harassment. Sending pornographic content without consent. Not to mention the whole childhood. There is something like being sex positive, and then there is harassment. And his mother definitely crossed the line over and over again. Yep, very effed up. So very, very effed up. I have no other words either. Now for the final update. My husband and I have spoken with therapists about the entire situation, and we've drawn a conclusion to how we will handle things. As advised by our therapist, and based on what we've planned ourselves, my mother-in-law will be cut off until she does the self-work and is no longer overly sexual towards family. That being said, my husband and I are prepared for her to be cut off permanently. She will likely not attend therapy herself, as she sees it as unimportant. I'm not sure if her opinion comes from her visiting a therapist previously, but she does believe that therapists just tell you everything wrong with yourself and why you need to change. They don't actually try to help your mental health, just make it worse. I'm sure everyone can imagine what has caused her to draw those conclusions. As of now, husband and I will not be pushing legal action. We've decided that for us, at this time, we would prefer to lay down the law in what we feel comfortable with. If that is respected, that is great, and nothing more will come of it on our end. If that isn't respected, and there are more attempts to reach us, such as creating accounts, etc., we will most likely seek out a restraining order. As I mentioned in a previous update, I have saved the screenshots from the original issue, so we will have that to present if needed. On to family. As a reminder, husband's side of the family was blowing up our phones asking why we would block mother-in-law. What mother-in-law told them was that we blocked her after she simply asked for our support in the things she's doing. What they didn't know was that she sent photos of herself. We told them, didn't send the photos of course, but did describe them. Things were understood quickly and nothing more was said. I don't know if family has taken it upon themselves to confront mother-in-law about this. If they have, great, she needs it. If they haven't, oh well. Now, from my own perspective, I was raised in a family where everything was very taboo. Sex, sexuality, our bodies, even our periods were difficult to talk about. So much so that when my mom found out I had a crush on a boy when I was 13, I cried and profusely apologized because I thought I would be in a lot of trouble. Asking questions wasn't okay either, so when I did have questions, I couldn't simply ask. For example, I overheard my mom say the word porn and didn't know what it meant. When I asked my parents what the word was, I got sent to my room. So, at 7 years old, I grabbed the family tablet and Googled it. Saw a bunch of naked people, got scared, put the iPad back in the living room. When my parents checked the search history that night, I was screamed at and not allowed to touch electronics for the rest of the year. With all of that in mind, a sex-positive family was so incredibly foreign to me. The idea of being able to go to your mom, ask about sex or your body, and have a conversation instead of getting in trouble was completely new. When my husband and I were dating, I never knew that his mom was going too far. I thought that this simply was sex positivity. Of course, I had intuition that things went too far at times, like when I questioned the toy conversation, but when the response to my questions were, "She's just really open," I chalked it up to that and didn't really question it anymore. To answer some common questions, my mother-in-law is not this much when it comes to my sisters-in-law. I always assumed it was because they were younger, but the pictures being sent to only my husband really hammered the nail into the covert incest coffin. Come to find out, mother-in-law also isn't quite as open with sisters-in-law. She is open about her own doings, but doesn't meddle in their own like she did my husband. I mentioned before that she would question my husband on our intimate life when we were dating. Another phone call with my middle sister-in-law revealed that she's absolutely never done that to the girls. In fact, there have been times where she's overheard my sisters-in-law saying something about their boyfriends, and she would say, "Ugh, lower your voice, I don't want to know." Whereas she would straight up ask my husband about sex. Another common question was, where's father-in-law? He's never been in the picture. My husband's dad left when mother-in-law was pregnant with her youngest daughter. Mother-in-law also doesn't have a father herself because he left when she was a baby. And there aren't a lot of men in the family. 2 distant uncles and a few cousins. But as far as close family, my husband was the only male growing up. And yes, some people got it right. My husband looks exactly like his bio dad. Same build, same hair type and color, same bone structure, same eye shape, even a very similar birthmark. That fact makes this even more gross altogether. And finally, no, we don't have children. However, I have always had concerns about leaving children alone with her because of the openness. I will know when my future children are ready to know about certain topics. Those conversations will come from my husband and I, and only us. I've always been concerned that mother-in-law would discard our opinions on that and give our future children the bird and bees talk whenever she felt like. Unless she cannot fix whatever is wrong in her brain, she will not ever be alone with our kids, and even possibly know them. But overall, this is my final post in the whole situation. I'll remain active on this account to answer questions, so if any other questions arise, ask away, and I would be happy to answer. Thank you so much to everyone for all of the advice. I didn't even know the term covert incest before posting, and I'm grateful that I do now. It's given my husband and I something to do a little research about. and it's changed our perspective on the past quite a bit. My husband will be taking all of this into therapy more than just his last sessions, and at my next personal session, I will likely bring it up too. It's also a topic that will be discussed at counseling together, more than just yesterday's session as well. Again, thank you everyone. Last story. My late husband's best friend confessed he's been waiting for me. I feel confused, not flattered. I'm a 38-year-old widow and mother of an 11-year-old boy. My husband passed away 3 years ago in a car accident. His best friend, let's call him John, has always stayed around helping with errands, occasionally checking in, even helping my son with his homework when I couldn't. A few nights ago, after we had a glass of wine in the kitchen while my son was asleep, he confessed he's been in love with me for years. He said he didn't speak while my husband was alive, out of respect, but now believes maybe we're meant to be. I was stunned. This is someone I trusted like a brother. I didn't know how to respond. A part of me feels guilty for not immediately pushing him away, and another part of me feels even guiltier for wondering what if. I feel emotionally overwhelmed. I don't think I'm ready for anything, but I also haven't felt desired or emotionally supported in so long. I don't know what to think. I guess I just needed to share this somewhere anonymously. Thanks for reading if you made it this far. I'm sorry for your loss. My advice is simple and straightforward. Be honest and transparent with him. Give yourself some time to reflect on your situation and process your emotions. Whatever you decide, I wish you the best. Thank you so much for your kind words. It's been really hard navigating all these emotions, but reading thoughtful responses like yours helps more than you know. I'm definitely giving myself time to breathe and feel. I really appreciate your advice. I think you should talk this out with a therapist. There are a lot of raw emotions here. You're right. I've actually thought about it more than once, but I guess part of me keeps pushing it aside, trying to stay strong on my own. But nights like this remind me that some wounds don't just heal with time. Thank you for the reminder. Maybe it's time I stop pretending I'm okay all the time.